Good morning. I want to talk about generosity this morning. Generosity is one of the pillars of our practice, and it's one of the ways in which we can stay tethered to our own goodness. It's a way in which we can really cut across the critical mind, cut across the tendency to judge or the instincts to hold on, the fear of letting go. And so when we bring forth a heart of generosity, the willingness to give of our time, to give what we know, our intellectual property, to give our material resources, the money that we have, the things that we have, to give friendship, then we are building a foundation, and that foundation is a really important part of any practice. It's an important part of generating the capacity to navigate our path of awakening. It's an important part of navigating our healing. It's an important part of giving us the resource to deal with the glitches and the incongruities in our process of maturation. And it is the basis of engagement, of showing up with another person in community and in the world. So generosity has a broad spectrum application. I wanted to talk about the three different kinds of generosity. Because as we practice generosity, we can practice it at any of these levels. And of course, the motivation that we have is going to have a huge impact on the result. And one of the things about generosity is that the first person that is the recipient of the blessings of generosity is not the person that we're giving something to, but to ourselves. To access that heart which is open, to access that mind which is non-judgmental, non-critical, to learn how to let go. Those are our gifts. That's what we get. So the first kind of generosity is the kind of generosity that we give when, we see a beggar on the street. We've got a couple of coins that we can give them, or we've got maybe a piece of an apple, or something that we don't want any longer. There's some food left over. It might be slightly going off, but not too bad, but maybe it would be enough. Maybe it's better than nothing to give somebody on the street. Or we have a whole closet full of clothes that we haven't worn in 5 years, and so we bundle them up and we take them to the Goodwill or to the thrift shop. So the first kind of giving is giving the stuff that we have no need for, we don't want anymore. It's the things that have been given to us that we won't ever use. And this kind of giving is still giving. It's still practicing generosity. It still helps us connect with our open-heartedness, our goodness. It still helps us understand the value of letting go. But this kind of giving, called beggarly giving, is called that way for a reason. Because it's the kinds of things that we share with people who are on the street that are not dear to us. The second kind of giving is the kind of giving that we give, not the stuff that we have no need for, but the stuff that we are abundant in. And so maybe something happened and there's 5 bags of rice in the cupboards. You will use rice, especially in monasteries. Monasteries use rice. Communities use rice. But you've got some extra that you can give away. And so the second kind of giving is giving the stuff that we have surplus of. We still use it, but we've got enough to spare. And you can notice when you give in this kind of way, the impact on your heart. What does it feel like? It's lovely to be able to give. And giving things that you use has a different impact than giving things that you will not use, that you have no need for. It's another level of letting go. Giving something that you need, but you have an abundance of, that you can spare. The last kind of giving is kingly giving. And that's giving, excuse me, that's giving the things that is most treasured. That's giving your time when it is most precious to you. That's giving the thing that you have treasured the most. And in the scriptures, there's many stories of people practicing this by giving their own life to feed or to support a wild animal. So when we start working with this kingly giving, where we give what we cherish the most, it's really important that our mind is clear, that our aspiration is clear, and that we're doing this without any kind of confusion. And so where we also need to take care of, with all kinds of giving, but particularly this kind of giving, is to do this in a way where we're not compensating. Instead of having a sense of well-being in ourselves, we give things that we don't have to give. We give money that we don't have to give in order to feel good about ourselves because we don't have another way of feeling good about ourselves. So there's a tension, a dynamic tension between a skillful appraisal of what we are able to do, why we're doing it, and the complete surrender of just giving up everything, giving away the best that we have, giving away things that we rely on, with the clarity that this is the right thing to do right now. We're not setting ourselves up for being in desolation or desperation. We're doing what is right to do, to give up completely. So, in addition to our own intention, one of the classical teachings is that the recipient of the gift also impacts the impact of the result of giving. And so when you give something to somebody whose mind is filled with confusion, it's a different impact than when you give something to somebody whose mind is calm. And that again is a different impact than when you give something to somebody whose mind is quite free, quite loving, plugged into what is timeless and what is pervasive and what does not shake. Because the impact is both in the mind state of the one who gives and the mind state of the one who receives. And so we can see that we can make generosity a practice with ordinary things. We can make generosity a practice when we do the dishes or take out the trash or do daily chores. Yes, it is something that needs to be done. So probably it would be fitting into the first category of it has to be done. It's not like there's a choice in whether we take out the trash or we do the dishes. But when we do it with a heart that is full, when we do it with an intention to give it as a gift, not distracted, when we use it as a practice opportunity to cultivate generosity, it has a different impact than we're just doing the dishes to get it done. I have been in a car on several occasions going through toll booths on the freeway, and somebody behind pays for somebody above. Total stranger. Don't know the person. There's no way that they'll be thanked. And they just pay twice. And so our generosity can take the shape of being very deliberate, where we are seen, noticed, and recognized. It also can be very anonymous, where you can think about things that you can do for members of the community, and they might not even know that it was you doing it. And notice the impact of that. Notice what happens. Now, one story that touched me very deeply about the impact of generosity. A monk in the monastery at Chithurst, his father committed suicide, and every time he thought about his dad, he would go into terrible grief. And so he decided that he was just going to think of random thoughts of generosity, random acts of kindness for members of the community. He'd set it up, and he'd try to organize it so that he could be around the person when they saw what he had done for them, so that he could see their smile. And when he would see their smile, them light up with joy and appreciation, he'd say in his heart, "That's for you, Dad. That's for you." And so after some weeks, maybe a month or two, every time he thought of his dad, instead of going into terrible, terrible grief and pain, he filled up with joy. Because of all of the many acts of generosity that he had dedicated in his father's memory. And so generosity can be a practice that we can use deliberately to support us with some of the anxiety that we experience, with some of the depression that we experience, and see the impact of doing that.